am Noctis, Prince of Lucis and King of Fishing!
Why does every game seem to have a fishing minigame? RPGs, life sims, platformers, mobile games, shooters, this otherwise mundane real-life activity consistently appears across a wide variety of game genres, formats, and budgets, to the point where players have long stopped questioning their presence. But as with all trends in game development, there is usually a good reason behind its existence, either due to the players or the developers. What could that be? Let me ask you this, my dear viewer. What is the bare minimum required to make a fishing mechanic work? Pause for a second and try to recall as many examples as you can. Come back when you're done.
Go get some snacks. Perhaps a carbonated soda.
I hope they have ices!
I've chosen the large tub.
My nipples look like milk duds!
I've got some yellow liquid for your popcorn. And it's non-dairy.
La la la.
All good? Well, it's quite simple really. Step 1, player goes to a fishing spot. Step 2, select option to fish. Step 3, roll RNG. Step 4, profit. That's it. If you strip away all the fat, these 4 steps really are the bare minimum you need for a functional fishing mechanic. All the other secondary elements you're thinking of, different rods, bait, weather conditions, time of day, character stats, and so on, these are only modifications to the pool of possible results or chances of success. They aren't mandatory for the mechanic to function. However, this is a video game. Processes can't just be functional. They also need to help build a fun or immersive player experience. So an extra step is added between 2 and 3, the minigame. This adds an interactive element which helps maintain player engagement throughout the fishing process. In other words, creating a minigame for its own sake isn't the developer's objective. The fishing system itself is, since it can be integrated into various other game systems. The minigame only exists to make the fishing process more palatable to the average player. Seems understandable. So what's the catch? Well, your mileage may vary on the fun part. Because the minigame is merely an extra step in a process, there aren't any strict guidelines or requirements for building it, meaning it can be almost anything. It can be a simple timed button press with a reaction window, or be an elaborate, fully developed side activity with unique controls and progression systems. This is where all those secondary elements I mentioned earlier come in. Equipment, bait types, character skills, environmental factors like weather or time of day, and so on. These serve as additional variables for the player to influence and engage with, helping give the fishing system more depth and complexity. This gives developers a lot of flexibility in how they want to create and implement a fishing system or minigame, making it compatible with projects of almost every production scale. It could be made by an experienced team of developers or given to a junior dev as a training project. The mechanics could be built from the ground up or be cobbled together using discarded prototypes, features, and assets. But despite the various ways in which a fishing system can be built and presented, almost all players can easily understand it. The tricky thing about designing gameplay around real-life activities is that they might be unfamiliar and tough to explain to players from different regions and cultures. Like, imagine trying to explain and teach Mahjong to a German guy. This is the kind of shit localization teams have to deal with. Fishing doesn't have this problem. People across all countries, cultures, and age groups universally understand the concept of fishing. No localization required. Fishing is also compatible with a wide range of genres and settings. You can shove it into almost any game genre and make it work. You don't even need any water, or even fish. Xenoblade 2 Salvaging is basically a fishing minigame, but for treasure and with clouds instead of fish and water. Controls-wise, pretty much anything goes. Move a mouse around, tap on a keyboard, button mash on a controller, use motion controls, swipe a touchscreen, play with cardboard, anything and everything is usable. It just works. This is all possible because the minigame's mechanics are unimportant. Game mechanics exist to construct and let players engage in a fantasy. And this particular fantasy is so simple and universal that any mechanic can be used to portray it. To an extent, this is also a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Since fishing minigames are easy to understand and develop, many different examples get created across a wide variety of games, making it easy to find references to make development even more straightforward. This is partially why these minigames tend to to feel so similar. There's little need to reinvent the wheel, so any developer who wants to create a wholly new and interesting minigame is making the active decision to do so, especially since the minigame itself isn't all that important in the grand scheme of things. What truly makes fishing systems shine is how well they are integrated with the rest of the game. Right, integration. I also mentioned that earlier. Unlike minigames based on most other activities such as sports or cards, players may logically expect to gain something from fishing, the fish. This lets fishing function as an additional distribution system for items and quests which are separated from the primary game loop. Fish may function as consumables, crafting materials, or resources required by other parts of the game. Persona 4 demonstrates this perfectly. Its fishing system is influenced by variables such as character stats, weather, and bait. The fish obtained can be used as consumable items in battle, and catching a special fish is required to progress one of the social links. The fish don't need to be useful either. As every Pokemon player should know, collecting for the sake of collection can also be fun. Filling out catalog entries or displaying collectibles can make for long-term player goals. That's the closest thing there is to a goal for Animal Crossing. Genshin Impact combines both. Fish are a collectible resource which can also be displayed in the game's housing system, but they aren't consumables. They are instead used to trade for exclusive items like weapons, furniture, or extra rods. The catch is that most of these weapons are quite bad, meaning they are only really worth obtaining for the sake of collection, but at least they look funny. In these cases, the fish may also come with a scoring system based on the size measurements and rarity of the fish. They could be used for in-game contests, extra conditions for trades and side quests, or just simple bragging rights. Some RPG games integrate fishing into their random enemy encounter systems, making the battle itself part of the minigame. Or would this technically be considered the main game? Anyways, Pokemon's fishing is a simple timed button press before battle, while Xenoblade 2's salvaging hauls up treasure alongside the occasional monster. By linking fishing to other parts of the game, developers can use it as another place to hide rare items and unlocks for players to uncover, creating a feeling of reward for engaging with that activity. This way, fishing helps the game world feel larger, filled with more activities to do and secrets to uncover, creating room for players to explore. The catch is that this can be an annoying and excessive time sink. Yes, it's very important to reward players for their time, but if the reward is too good, fishing goes from an optional side activity to a semi-mandatory grind for optimal gameplay. Xenoblade 2 placed a big focus on collecting rare blades via a non-paid gacha system. Since salvaging was the most efficient way to earn money, many players found it was practically mandatory for upgrading. Genshin introduced a new polearm weapon as a free reward to incentivize fishing. But the catch was that the catch was too good to ignore. Even if you had a premium alternative, many players felt it was almost mandatory to get due to how strong the catch was. Both games would later rectify this mistake. Xenoblade 3 completely ditched the salvaging mechanic, partly because abandoning the rare blade system made such a money source unnecessary. Genshin changed the fishing rewards into side grades of existing weapons, reducing how essential they are perceived to be and eventually replaced them with furniture. So that covers the what and hows of fishing systems, but the biggest question of all remains: why? Why do game developers even want to include fishing into their games to begin with? Also, to a lesser extent, when and where should developers include it in their games? But why is the big one here? One key reason is time. Let's not mince words here. Fishing systems add a lot of playtime hours relative to their development cost. In the current day, session time is a key metric. Many games aim for long total playtimes, even if that playtime isn't fun, because it helps create an illusion of value to consumers. Let me ask you this: which would you rather buy? A game which advertises itself as having 70 hours of total playtime, or a game with only 10 hours? Even if 50 of those 70 hours end up being meaningless filler, it still sounds more appealing to a general consumer who doesn't know any better. Marketing and advertising isn't about accurately representing a product. It's about selling a dream to an unknowing consumer and convincing them to spend money on your product. That dream doesn't have to be right, it just doesn't need to be wrong. So remember, if you ever want extra budget to include a new feature into your game, it always helps if you can convince upper management or your publishers that it will result in better sales, somehow. Of course, this is mainly a concern when the developer is focused on financial motivations and profitability. In other words, they are targeting the mass market or running live service, so they need to add features into their product which appeal to consumers. Indie devs don't worry about this as much. They are more concerned with creating what they want and will worry about whether it'll sell after. But that is business, and this is game design. Fortunately for us, minigames fall under the purview of the developers and not business execs, so they are usually only added if it legitimately improves and complements the game experience in some way. One of those ways is by being a good match for games aiming for a more relaxed, low-intensity experience. Fishing is a naturally slow, low-stress activity, making it very compatible with genres such as life simulation, survival, RPG, or adventure games, which are naturally slow-paced, involve inventory management and stats, and feature a range of peaceful locations such as farms, towns, rivers, lakes, and seasides. But just because a game aims to be relaxing doesn't mean fishing belongs in it. It needs to feel like a natural part of the game world, so it's dependent on what sort of experience the devs aim to create and the context that gets established. Fishing would fit into a game about diving or managing a sushi restaurant, but it'd be pretty weird to see in a game about bartending or cafe management or city building. Sometimes the compatibility issue doesn't lie with the setting, context, or vibes, but with the genre itself. Fishing minigames are a mismatch for genres such as fighting, beat-em-ups, or shooters because they clash awkwardly with the main game's controls or the faster pacing. That said, anything is possible if the devs want to be smartasses about it. Hades lets you fish in the lavas of hell and makes jokes about it, and Ultra Kill contains a secret bonus level as a parody of fishing. But despite potential incompatibility issues, some developers include fishing anyway in an attempt to break up intensity and let players catch their breath in faster-paced games. This can work, but it can also backfire if handled incorrectly. Big the Cat's campaign from Sonic Adventure is an infamous example. It was likely intended to be a break from Sonic's high-speed platforming, but it was not enjoyable because it was structured as a separate campaign. This made it mandatory for full completion, and you had to fully commit to playing it. It wasn't something you could easily spend 5 minutes on between levels or ignore like the Chow Garden. For the icing on the cake, Big's slow walk speed and the sluggish fishing controls clash badly with the rest of the game, so the minigame wasn't even fun to play. Years later, Sonic Frontiers learned from these mistakes. Big's new fishing minigame is now truly optional, the controls are simplified, the process is now much quicker, it provides useful yet non-essential rewards, and it was a better match for the game's more relaxed open-world structure. It's now a genuinely enjoyable side distraction. This is all generally how minigames should be handled. They are meant to be breaks from the more complex main game, so they should be optional, simple to learn, and not take up too much time. Speaking of minigames, some games which are already filled to the brim with minigames, such as the Yakuza series or Mario Party, may include fishing just for the sake of adding another minigame to the pile. Inversely, this is also why some games opt against having fishing as a minigame. They just don't have minigames, period. Think of games like Minecraft, where fishing is just a matter of waiting and clicking after a while. No timing or interesting gameplay component whatsoever. Perhaps they consider minigames to be unnecessary distractions and would prefer more focused player experiences. Or they simply don't have the budget for side content, so they cut out the fun minigame and focus purely on the result and the system. Ironically, games about fishing, such as Dave the Diver or Dredge, don't include fishing minigames because, well, they are already full-scale fishing games. Nothing mini about them. Since fishing is their core mechanic, all the subsystems, secondary elements, and considerations we discussed earlier get scaled up to a macro level. This means that these games will typically feature other gameplay systems or minigames to support and give purpose to the fishing mechanics rather than the other way around. Dave the Diver is half restaurant management minigame. The core gameplay loop consists of diving to collect fish, selling sushi in the restaurant, and then spending the income to upgrade the restaurant and your diving gear to earn more money, explore deeper, and obtain more valuable fish. Dredge is a fishing horror game. The core gameplay loop consists of fishing, selling fish, and upgrading a ship, but the greater scope purpose is about solving an eldritch horror mystery, exploring the world, and fleeing from monsters. You know, typical horror game structure. The horror mystery provides the purpose for the fishing, and the fishing serves as the way a player engages with the horror mystery. Finally, some games will actively choose to avoid making a minigame out of fishing due to repetition. This tends to happen in survival games such as Subnautica, which place a heavy focus on repeatedly collecting and managing resources. Since the player will be repeating the same actions multiple times, any minigame, no matter how simple or fun, will rapidly wear itself out from sheer repetition. In this scenario, a developer will actively avoid doing anything which would unnecessarily waste a player's time and patience. If anything, the devs should be adding ways to automate or outright skip the process, helping free up the player's time so they can focus on other, more important goals beyond basic survival. We should be nearing the end now, time to wrap up. Over these past few minutes, we've broken down the essential components of fishing, the various ways it can be portrayed through game mechanics, how its easiness to understand among players impacts development, its capability for integration with other game systems, and various whys and why nots which developers consider when deciding whether to add fishing into their games. Do I have any closing words to leave you? Well, just remember, at the end of the day, gaming is pragmatically meaningless. People do not play games for the sake of gaining knowledge, earning a salary, getting famous, improving a relationship, or anything actually practical or important. It is an activity which exists purely for the sake of fun and entertainment, so anything added into a game should also be for the sake of making it as fun as possible. Underneath everything we've discussed, this is the key underlying reason behind why so many games contain fishing minigames. It's because the developers thought it'd be fun. As long as a developer is driven by such a motivation, their hearts, vision, and creative spirit will all ultimately be in the right place. And that's the most important thing for any game maker to have. Now, to you, my dear viewer, tell me, which game's fishing minigame did you enjoy most, and why did you like it so much? Hope to see some fun responses in the comments. Now, if you excuse me, there's a nice digital pawn and rod somewhere with my name on it. See you all next time.
Ta ta ta!